The scene opens to the Manor of the Gauntlet, located in Salisbury, on the night of February 2nd, 1455, the eve of Candlemas, and the night of the Covenant Council meeting. A group of you are rising for the evening and inevitably congregate together in one of the common rooms near the entrance as each of you finishes getting ready for the night. Robert is last to step into the room, as you've all found a place to sit or stand comfortably. And as he enters, you are again convened, and you know that the meeting is to occur sometime during the witching hour. And so you have some time before then. The scene is yours.
If we have some time, Robert is going to seek out the Nofnemtet.
Alright, do you tell anyone or do you leave?
I think you already said it at the meeting, so should be expected.
Alright. Then Robert is not entering this room. Notably, it's just the three of you at this kind of salon area, and you recall that Robert's off to find a Nofnemtet. What does Cormac mean to do for the next few hours before the meeting is to occur?
Is there anything to do, is the question.
Nothing required, there's nothing you need to do. Make sure no one was gonna try and waylay a prince on the way to the meeting or something.
No, definitely not going to do that. He'll just wait patiently. Unless somebody else has ideas of something to entertain them.
What about Elenid? What are her...
Are there maps here?
There would be a few of the more standard maps, and that is to say, there are not many maps in general, just like there are not many books in general, but there are some more of the basic ones, maps of generally continental Europe as it's known, and England as it's known. Nothing very exotic here. What is on Elenid's mind?
She has intentions on at least attempting to chart out a safe course to the burial mound that they, at least her and Cormac intended to go to before. But they clearly don't have the time for it now.
Alright, you want to chart out a route from here to the burial mound?
Yes, a safe route that hopefully doesn't get anyone killed.
Let me review my own notes on where it is located. So the place you're going to, Bath Tumulus, Stony Littleton Longbarrow, the ancient tomb in Somerset. Let's see here.
It's actually not terribly far away.
It's not, in fact. It's west of you by about 60 miles. And there is a road that goes into Somerset So there won't be much planning required for you. But looking over the map, it's good to review and refresh your mind on where you need to go. So you spend some time doing that. And what does Thomas mean to do, or is he also going to wait patiently until the time for the meeting?
I think Thomas might get a bit conspiratorial with Cormac, given everything that's transpired.
Cormac is all for getting conspiratorial just because he's bored.
It occurs to me that being under new leadership, Lincoln will be quite vulnerable.
He just looks at you quietly, as he does when you normally trail off like that without explaining what you mean.
If Everly has a considerable force of mortal soldiers at her disposal, I wonder how long they'll hold up against a direct onslaught from Jack Timbers.
Probably not long. Are you planning on seeking out Jack Timbers to ask him?
I think a certain jester's already done that for us.
You're really making a leap here. We have no way of knowing who the jester's friends are, and thinking that it might be them is, well, it's foolish.
I prefer to think of it as optimistic, but call it what you like.
So do we wait to see what Tom Lefoy has for us?
I think that's probably best. Otherwise, it's just raw speculation. Besides which, we don't know anyone else who might be able to get word to them.
What we're discussing, you know, is treasonous.
Not as yet. Lincoln has not yet rejoined the Covenant.
I'm quite certain they disagree. They'd say it's never left.
Facts are funny things that way, aren't they?
Not funny, but necessary.
They seem to behave differently depending on who's looking at them.
Isn't that the entire basis of philosophy?
I'd make a right terrible philosopher then.
Oh, I don't know. You're vague enough to be one, that's for certain.
I'd much rather have something I can lay a hand on, get a grip of, something concrete.
Then you're right, you wouldn't make a good philosopher. In any case, I don't think Everly would be here tonight.
Likely not. Still, I dearly would like to have a chat with Mr. Timbers and his companions. I think an opportunity is presenting itself.
I am hoping we get the chance soon. What if we don't? What then?
I do have a castle on the mend.
Explain.
If the rebels sack Lincoln and make to hold it for a protracted period, which is completely impossible for our kind, of course, the Covenant will inevitably come to drive them out. If at the same time a similar group were to rise up in London to the same effect, possibly even taking the Tower of London in the process, where do you imagine those forces would prioritize?
I think I know where you're going with this, but why don't you tell me?
London is the greater prize. Defending it is laughably simple to decide on. Besides which, a roving band at that, wouldn't do well to try and hold a fixed position, especially if they can't defend it during the day. Which would leave the besiegers open from the rear.
I'm not quite sure I understand. Why don't you tell it to me like you would a child?
A coordinated attack between Lincoln and London would force the Covenant to respond.
I'm 8 years old. I don't know the word coordinated.
Both at the same time.
Ah. So you're saying that you would seek to shelter the rebels?
In a castle, outside of London.
That's all you had to say.
Which would put them in prime position to assault those sieging the city in an attempt to retake.
Now it makes perfect sense. And it's a good idea. I suppose if we're going to be conspiratorial, we might as well be playing. We're going to cause a right ruckus.
The trick will be swaying certain individuals to that mode of thinking.
Are you referring to the rebels or the rest of our little group?
Both and then some.
Well, you're nothing if not persuasive. And he'll pat Thomas on the shoulder.
Maybe we should take them to an opium den first.
Oh, now you know how that turned out.
You don't hear me complaining.
Let's change the subject. We still have the problem of contacting the rebels, if Tom can't help us with that.
It does rather hinge on that. It's all for naught if his friends are just wisps of smoke and the figments of a madman's imagination.
Somehow I don't think so.
Nor do I, but can't be ignored as a possibility.
He's a well-respected ghoul without a master. You don't get that far without pulling in a few favors and being true to your word. Bloody hell, why can't they start this thing early? I think I should go mad in the salon.
It's either wait here or wait there. Personally, I prefer to wait here. At least it's a known quantity. We control it.
Since when do we control anything? It feels like we're riding a rocky ocean.
There are worse things to be writing. With a good ship and a decent crew, even a rocky ocean can be tamed.
We don't have a crew, just the four of us.
Don't we, though?
And a whole lot of monsters swimming the depths who'd like to eat us whole.
Honestly, the only difference between now and my youth is there's solid ground under my feet. And the monsters look like people.
They're not, though. They're no more people than you or I. And a whole lot older and more powerful.
That just means they have more to lose.
We have a lot to lose, too. Don't forget that.
Only our own lives.
Well, that's nothing then. What was I so concerned about?
Exactly. And Tom grins a bit. Truly, though, because they have more to lose, means they're also more prone to overreaction, which means they're more prone to making mistakes.
We've already seen Martinique make a terrible mistake. And Ambrose very nearly.
No, he definitely did. The only difference is his mistake didn't come back to bite him.
Yet.
I think we'll find out for certain tonight.
It ought to be an enlightening evening. With all that we've seen and done, I'm wondering how the other princes have begun to feel about us. Do they trust us as little as the ones we've already met?
If Ragna is any indication, they all look at us as if to look at a sword. It's either at their throats or in their hands.
Well, we really don't know which we are, do we?
I suppose that's up to us.
The line we're walking is rather alarming, isn't it? On the one hand, we're supposed to be the Covenant's most trusted tools. On the other hand, you and I at least are looking to see them overthrown.
And on the third hand, we're expected to betray those who we're meant to protect.
When I accidentally killed that man, it was a feeling much like I'm feeling now. Like any moment the ground could fall away. What if we walk into that room tonight and they have us arrested and executed? What if they know more than we think?
Well, I'm certain that they know more than we think they know. About what is a better question. And whether or not they have evidence to prove it is quite another.
Cormac begins to pace, hands clenched behind his back. Thinking.
And if we die, we won't have to worry about any of it.
Yes, but I very much like living.
As do I. But being Ash just means an end to worries, so there's no reason to fear it.
I'm not even sure that's true. After the talk I had with the Cappadocian. But perhaps I'm needlessly worrying. I am hoping that revealing to Martinique's duplicity has warmed Ambrose toward us a bit. Might be too much to ask, but I hope it.
At least he knows we're not intentionally hiding anything.
And where are the other two? Why did Robert say he was going to see that damned... whatever he is?
Yes, the Moor. I expect he'll be at the old serum chamber somewhere. Elenid's in the drawing room, going over some maps or some such.
How much longer?
A few hours, if that.
A few hours.
It's still winter after all. The sun does set quite early.
When it seemed distant, weeks or more, I wasn't so concerned about it, but now that we're here, I have nothing to do but fret.
What were you and Elenid looking into in Cambridge anyway?
Something the Cappadocian asked us to do. A friend who'd gone missing some time before. It's quite the puzzle, really. Surprised you haven't asked already.
Frankly, there wasn't time, and I didn't know just how sensitive it was.
Not all that sensitive, I suppose. It's not a secret, anyway. The Cappadocian gave us a book. It had hints as to his friend's whereabouts. We've been looking into some of the symbology we found within.
Oh, what have you found?
All evidence points to a place called Bat Tumulus. Have you heard of it?
I'm going to assume not. But I'll let the storyteller tell.
Do you have any Hearth Wisdom?
Nope.
I'm gonna say no then.
Not a whit.
We went to visit the place not long ago, just to have a look around. Wish we could have stayed longer, but this meeting was looming. Maybe next time we go, you can go with us. I'm sure Ellen would be grateful for the company. I know I would.
Investigating hoary ancient wisdom. Can't think of anything better to do.
We've already spent a great many hours poring through old manuscripts. It's the kind of thing I love to do. I think I'll go for a walk. If I stand here pacing too much longer, I'm going to wear a hole in the floor.
Might steer clear of the river, though.
And why's that?
Just in case errant rock happens to have caught something it wouldn't do to be near.
Are you going to stay here then?
Was that an invitation for company?
It wouldn't go amiss. But I don't want to distract you from whatever musings you have ahead.
I think just as fine walking as I do sitting. And he'll ride.
At least we'll have more to look at than these goddamned walls.
True enough. Probably best to let Elena know they're going out. Not to wait for us.
Unless she wants to go too.
That as well.
Let's find out.
Okay, so the two of you alert Elenid to your intent to go on a walkabout through the city. Elenid, do you join them?
She has finished going over the maps by now, correct?
Yes, by now you know more precisely, with better detail, what route you will take from here to Bath Tumulus.
Alright. She will, but before doing so, she will share the information that they're very close to the location they were investigating before.
I've already told Thomas what we were on about. I didn't think that I needed to keep it a secret.
Very well, I wasn't certain if you'd be interested in this. But it is, at least from what I've seen, fairly simple to get to from here. My suggestion is that since we're in the area, we go by and we investigate before we go on whatever our next mission is, should we have a next mission.
That was fully my intention anyway. We're too close to give up now.
I think Robert would also like to make a trip out to Canterbury, but that's in the opposite direction.
Canterbury, whatever for.
The velvet merchant who went missing in York apparently has ties there.
Could reveal more clues, I suppose, or more frustrating dead ends.
Well, if you wish to accompany him, you can, but I have no intention on giving up on what I have what we have worked so hard to get.
No, I think the choice would be up to him. Continue on to Canterbury alone, or accompany us to Beth, Tumulus, and then on to Canterbury if we wish.
Alright. The group of you continue to discuss your ideas about traveling after the meeting as you depart the manor, and the scene fades on the group of you as you leave the estate. We transition scenes. Returning to the chamber beneath Old Sarum. The venerable and ancient stone of the walls of the Covenant Council. The faceless statues in reverent and subservient poses around the room. The wide circular stone fixture Robert DeVere, you are entering this, and you see that the brazier in the center of this stone circle is lit, creating some light. And you see that Anaf Nemtet steps forward from the corner, from the darkness, as some of the light reflects off of him intermittently. Perhaps he was already waiting here, or perhaps he's arrived just before you. But he seems to notice you and smiles faintly, bowing deeply at the waist as you approach.
Enough, Nemtet. How have you been? Good, I trust.
I have fared very well. These are very tumultuous times for this land, it seems. And you as well, I hope, have been safe.
More or less. I have visited the battlefield and discovered something most troubling.
Is that so?
Yes, it seems whoever killed my grandsire had the ability to control the plants, make the very trees bend and attack.
His face contorts a bit, looking interested, if not confused. Tell me more about this.
Yes, I had a vision when going through the belongings of my grandsire into school. And I saw a woman. It seemed very oddly dressed. Perhaps a patchwork dress made by her own hand. seem definitely quite at home in the forest. I saw her being able to snap steel as if it was. Out of character, did Reynald, when he swung his sword, did he hit the arm of the woman and it just snapped, or was it like a tree he hit or something?
It wasn't clear. The vision as a whole was very blurry. You did see him swing at the woman, and when the blade was pulled back, it was broken.
Okay, then. I'm going to belay that part since it's not clear. But he did see her take his grandsire's blade, yes?
So Sir Reynald's blade was the one that broke on him.
Yes, and the vision he got from his grandsire's blade was he was able to strike the woman, but to no avail.
Yes.
Okay. My grandsire's blade was able to strike true, but from what I can tell, no real damage came from it, as he shortly perished afterward.
His face softens, and he puts his hands together almost in a prayer formation. I'm very sorry for your loss.
I appreciate the kind words. At this point, I really am curious. Have you heard of any sort of thing that controls trees, plants, takes the form of a woman?
My friend, I am afraid that describes many things that I have studied over the millennia. There are a group of mortals who have command over forces of nature, time even. I have seen some of them command power comparable even to my own kind, of great ferocity. I have also studied some of your kind which display very similar abilities. I believe they are known as the Gangrel. And there are creatures and monsters, older still, which might display such power. I am afraid, based on what you describe, it could be a number of things.
Assuming they are kindred, or a Canite. I have not heard of Gangrel being able to manipulate plants. Is this within their blood?
Not per se. There was a Canite scholar with whom I confided and shared many notes many years ago, and he described to me a kind of... He kind of gestures with his hand as though trying to find the words. Descendancy, or perhaps cousin of the Gangrel. They are known to be in these lands, at least known to be in the lands west of here, in the place you call Ireland. Perhaps they are Gangrel, or perhaps not, but this scholar seemed to describe some affinity for nature, perhaps even a relationship with it.
I would say the horses, they were spared. Not a single one died. They seem to have a great love of nature and not so much for humanity.
I have also known of druids and witches, again of the kind, which have had similar compassions and perhaps not as great power. Are you so sure it was one of your kind?
No, I am not at all. There's very precious little to go off of. But I would think like witches, druids, none have known to make claim to this area as far as I've known, speaking with the locals.
And perhaps they were passing through for some reason. Or summoned. Who can say? I'm afraid I have no great detail on these other cousins of the gangrel to the west. Even the scholars seem to have few details beyond what I have shared.
Did you at least get a name for them?
He shakes his head. Only that they had some kind of relationship, in theory, to your gangrel, and were somewhere in the Ire. Or perhaps they were hundreds of years ago. This information, I am afraid, is out of date. I have not heard from any who have known such things in some time.
Perhaps dead end. I do not see any occult items left around to bring back.
Unfortunate.
But at least I have two possibilities. One maybe more plausible.
He nods a few times.
Well then, I thank you for your time and your wisdom.
I am happy to serve and to share in these stories. If you do come across this creature and survive, I would be most interested in hearing your report. And he forces a smile. You can tell he's being a little bit facetious here.
Survive is the key part of that.
Alright. What will Robert do with the remainder of his time?
He'll probably look for the others.
Alright. So you depart the chamber, and in due time, you come across the remainder of your coterie. They seem to be discussing idly as they're passing through the city. And so you have a few more hours before this meeting. As was described, because it is winter, there is much more time in the night. But with little else to do, perhaps you simply return to the chamber. Thomas Elenid and Cormac. You find Robert, and he seems to be back from his meeting with the strange entity, Anopnemtet. And so the four of you are back together. How will you finish out the rest of your time? We'll start with Elenid.
Well, she'd probably try to find out how things went with trying to figure out who the magical tree manipulating people are.
Well, from what I've learned, there's a possibility it could be a rare offshoot of the gangrel blood. Unfortunately, not much is known about them, nor have I been given a name. Perhaps someone of the Gangrel clan could know more. They were known to live in the Ire. The other, it could be a druid or a witch, which I would have no clue of where to start in that pursuit.
At the mention of Ireland, Tom will cock a brow at Cormac.
I told you I've seen something like this before. Something terrible and ancient.
That's fine, but this ancient is very far from where they are known to be, and this poses problems.
Not incredibly far. I mean, we are only on the neighboring island to it.
Perhaps if you consider the vastness of the world.
I don't even like considering the possibility, but we have to. Based on what we've seen. We could, of course, travel to Ireland to find out more.
It would give you a chance to see your homeland again.
It has been quite some time.
I'm not entirely comfortable going through forests in an ancient's own homeland.
We could always leave you in Dublin.
I have friends there. You'd be comfortable.
Yes, well, I'm sure I could find plenty to do there.
The question that remains is, will this be important to our current mission?
That remains to be seen if they see it as important. We can certainly put on airs and make it seem like it is such, and try to be able to go there.
At least we have things to present to the council. And I suspect this being such a freak occurrence, we won't be tasked to directly deal with this and perhaps more focus on the rebels.
Aye, they are a troubling sort. I certainly hope Lady Everly is prepared for potential onslaught. News of Jean-Marc's destruction will have reached many ears by now.
How much longer is it? I do feel a little more prepared now that I've had some time to walk and think.
Out of character, you know it's a couple more hours.
We could always just make for the chamber and wait there patiently.
Yes, but I suspect there is more to potentially do here than there is there.
Oh. What are we doing meandering around Salzburg?
Better than standing idly in a room.
I certainly agree with that. Perhaps we can find some trouble to get into. I'm exceedingly good at that.
Yes, trouble does seem to find us.
Where is the Elysium in this blasted city? Give the Harpies something to flap about.
As I understand it, there are no other Canaanites, apart from us and the Covenant Princes, even allowed in the county.
What sort of bloody nonsense is that?
I think they saw it as a mark of status to grant an entire county to a coterie of loyal servants of the Covenant.
Why is this the first I'm hearing of this?
Weren't we told this before?
Truthfully, I probably wasn't listening. Sometimes when the elders talk, it just sounds like noise. So are you saying this is our domain, then?
The whole of the county.
That's miraculous. But now that I know that, I'm not sure what to do with it.
Been mulling it over myself for some time. The opportunities are there, but the infrastructure is lacking.
All right. So the group of you spend some more time meandering through Salisbury, perhaps discussing what you might do upon your recollection that the entire county has been gifted to the Gauntlet for its service. Perhaps there are plans there in the future. But in time, as you discuss and walk, you find the hour growing later, and your path takes you back towards Old Sarum. As you again find your way returning down the disused steps. Were you going to say something?
No, I just hit the wrong control button. That's all.
All return again. Robert the Chamber as much as you left it. Enough Nemtet is still present. The brazier is still lit. The four of you enter into the cold air of this old stone chamber. Enough Nemtet seems content and quiet. He seems unsurprised to see each of you, but smiles as you enter and bows again. As the witching hour approaches, and during this hour, figures do start to emerge and convene through the dozen lightless hallways that lead to this chamber. Kincaid is first to arrive, in his simple black attire. Next, Octavia, the child prince, in her own conservative indigo gown, coming from a different hallway. The Nosferatu Prince Sebastian then comes staggering in with his cane and his iconic hobble step, making the echoes through the hallway until he appears. From the far side, Ambrose stalks in, at a slow pace, dressed in his chainmail and breeches. Prince Barbaros is next to stride in with a bit of bluster in a doublet bearing the small red Lancaster rose emblem. And lastly, Prince Ragna glides in from the opposite end from Barbaros. The two of them locking eyes like the steel of two blades over the fires of the brazier. The Covenant Council is rejoined, save for one. And as though replacing his absence and feeling it, the remaining 6 elders all eventually look upon the group of you. Each of them standing around this low-lit brazier. Ambrose is again first to break the silence. Let us waste no time in our deliberation. The Lincoln Prince has been destroyed. This is known. Gauntlet lords and lady, what news do you bring of the state of Lincoln?
Tom is going to take a moment to take stock of his fellows before he speaks.
Robert looks at Thomas and nods.
Lady Everly has been dutiful in her service, preserving the site of the attack, maintaining order. There are some that chafe under her, but overall, she has the forces and the connections necessary to retain praxis, and at present, no one has challenged her on this.
You feel the weight of all of their gaze on you, Thomas. Ambrose nods once. And her loyalty to the Covenant. You trust this?
I have no reason to question it. Her loyalty to her subjects. She is an elder. She behaves as such, whether or not those beneath her approve.
It seems as though Ambrose is about to ask you something, but a smaller voice interrupts as the child prince Octavia points at the group of you, and you see she's actually pointing at Elenid in particular. I wish to hear what this one thinks of Everly.
Tom will step back and gesture for Elenid.
She has a good deal of resources, uses them rather well, though her method of controlling the people is through fear. Effectual at the moment, but how long that will hold until someone gets an uprising in their head is, well, that remains to be seen. However, none of the elders are countering her claim. They all speak in support of her claiming praxis.
She studies you. Those piercing eyes.
This is the Malkavian prince, yes?
It's the child prince. You know that for sure.
I was more questioning if I needed to give any additional information due to inner thoughts, because Malkavian madness gaining information.
What are Elenid's thoughts?
Well, she certainly doesn't agree with the methods that Everly takes. If only because taking such actions does eventually lead to an uprising. She does, at least in the slightest bit, respect her for having the initiative to take power when power was available. However, respecting that specific portion of her does not mean respecting her as an individual.
Still with the flat affect, the prince staring at you. Thank you, Lady Versinghan. Are there any others who wish to reflect upon the leadership in Lincoln? Kincaid says as he puts his hands together, looking very pleasant.
We are of one mind in this. What Lady Elenid says is true. While Lady Everly does have substantial force, how it has been applied may lead to her hubris becoming her downfall.
The beak-faced Nosferatu steps in place a bit, readjusting his weight with his cane, looking up and down the group of princes and then back to you. I think perhaps we have wasted enough time on this. Clearly, Everly is skilled enough to hold power. Should she need more support, then she shall receive it from the Covenant. I think best that we not delay too long on the merits of her effects of leadership. They sound effective to me. He says this looking up to more the princes than you at this point. And this seems to get a few reluctant nods. And the Lincoln Prince, or I should say former Lincoln Prince, Jean-Marc, have you had time to investigate this? Ragnar says.
Elenid will look over to Robert, since he's the one that had the vision.
Precious little on the identity. But we do have some key bits of information. One, it was a woman. Two, they had the ability to control nature The plants themselves attacked soldiers. 3, she is hardy enough to take a sword blow. And I suppose the 4th is she spared all animals. Not a single horse was harmed.
Ragnar raises an eyebrow at this, and indeed several other princes exchange glances, some in confusion, some in stoicism. How very peculiar. Have you any leads on where this woman might be?
None. No one knows of this creature having claim to the forest or surrounding area. They seem to have disappeared.
And if she takes after other Canaanites of that ilk, she wouldn't necessarily need to put down roots.
Kincaid looks to the group. The Anarchs are growing in number and diversity, from all reports that I have heard. Is it not possible one among them has attained such staggering power, or joined their ranks?
It is plausible, but this was a single individual of some significant power who was able to overthrow an elder prince and his retinue. I would say more. It almost feels as though she was placed there for a purpose by someone. It seemed very personal.
Sebastian leans on his cane again, nodding to you. Indeed, I think it unlikely that this ragtag group of Anarchs could conjure such power. However, I have heard of inquisitors with powers that send even the eldest among us fleeing. This may be a resurgence of such clergy. The activity of our kind in the last century has not been what I would call discreet, after all. This draws a few murmurs from the other princes. What is Cormac doing during this time?
Cormac is doing his best to keep his mouth shut. He's watching on with interest, but a placid face, looking to each person as they speak and nodding where appropriate. Those eyes drift back to Ambrose most frequently of all, since he has not been heard from yet.
As you listen, and as this group of princes seems to murmur and make small comments of agreement or dismissal, you see that Octavia stares at you pointedly, quietly. It's an unsettling gaze. For some reason, this child's gaze is more weighty than the others, and her eyes have rested on you for some reason.
Upon seeing that he's been noticed, he will return. Although deferentially, he'll avert his eyes after staring for a moment,
Your humors show anxiety, concern, Lord Corsi. Why?
My lady, you might not think my concerns of consequence to the current matter.
And yet, I ask again, why?
Since you ask, I am obliged to tell you. What happened to Prince de Martinique was reminiscent of something that happened in my own past. A memory from a century or more ago of a creature dwelling in the woods who was able to single-handedly destroy a pack of lupines.
What creature do you speak of?
I know that she was called Witch, but there is much that I have forgotten in preservation of my own sanity. If it will help matters of the current investigation, I will submit myself to probing. Perhaps the... Sorry, go ahead. Perhaps the memories can be dredged up.
You hail from the West, Ireland.
My family hails from the south of Ireland.
There holds a legend among that land. The Witch of the Connacht is known to haunt some area in the Connacht of Ireland. As stories go.
Cormac, for his part, looks stricken. He hadn't remembered that part, not until she mentioned it just now. The Connacht. Yes. That is where I found her. She laid waste to entire armies. And I led them to her.
Several of the princes again exchange concerned glances. This legend is many millennia old. Impossible. Whatever this thing is, it cannot be this description. He looks more to Octavia more than the group of you, although his eyes actually avert when she turns to look back at him. There are many explanations for what this could be, and there is not enough information. Let us not forget as Ragna interrupts, looking to Ambrose. There are extenuating circumstances around Jean-Marc's death. Perhaps this woman was aided. Let us not forget that Barbaros was identified by multiple sources in the city of Lincoln around the time of Jean-Marc's death. I believe that warrants some reflection, at least. Barbaros, who's been quiet for most of this, except for the murmurs or nods, looks to her across the fire in anger.
How dare you imply my participation in the Lincoln Prince's death? You are bitter that your tool, the Duke of York, has been stripped of his title, and wish to wave darkness with his fall. You have long sought to spread your skirts south to York. I posit perhaps this was not unrelated to your own goals, Prince Ragnar. Perhaps you are the ally of this woman.
This draws tense looks between most of the other princes. Mind your words, Prince Barbaros. It has not escaped my notice of your meddling in the London court with the likes of Margaret Jew and Edmund Beaufort. You reach for power as a child does.
I am sure you would prefer none reach for any measure of security, while you build this banner behind Richard of York.
And he turns to face the group of you, as well as the collection of the princes as a whole, kind of looking about as he presents.
It is evident to me, and I am certain to many of you, that the Yorkist prince would have an army not loyal to England or even the Covenant, but to herself alone. Her activity with the English military has gone unchecked for too long now, and I propose that ends tonight.
How is the Gauntlet reacting to this exchange? It seems to have gone a bit off track. We'll start with Elenid.
Elenid's gaze shifts to whomever is speaking at the time, but she is not vocalizing anything, and she's trying to keep her expression that same polite smile. However, internally, this is more of a... She suspected that this could possibly happen, considering them not liking each other being a thing.
So she's maintaining a smile during this?
It's more out of polite courtesy. It doesn't look like much of, like she's enjoying it. It's more of the polite smile, say a servant usually gives.
And how is Robert reacting to this? Robert, you're muted.
His eyes are wide as he watches this exchange, a serious look upon his face.
And Cormac.
Upon seeing this confrontation between Barbaros and Ragnar, he can't help but... He's wide-eyed and interested, more interested than he has been in this entire meeting, actually, other than the mention of the Witch of the Connaught.
Sorry,
He's looking on.
The one
What's
that I
that?
didn't catch was he couldn't help but what?
He can't help but grin wide-eyed at the exchange, almost like a child watching beggars fight in the street.
And Tom, you see this confrontation unfolding.
Tom is going to fold his hands at the small of his back and take half a step forward, kind of almost like he's positioning himself between the rest of the gauntlet and the bickering princes. But he will speak up. For whatever it's worth, your graces, we found no evidence of any intercession on the part of any Covenant prince.
Kincaid nods to you. Perhaps this council is too fresh from its wound to meet. I suggest we reconvene at a later date, when cooler heads will prevail. All the same, such wanton self-righteousness is not befitting of a Covenant prince. I motion to recuse the Chester prince of his participation in this council. Clearly his mind is unsound for such mad propositions.
Let us not idly cast such motions in the heat of argument, Prince Ragnar. And I motion that the Yorkist prince be placed on probation, similar as was recommended for Jean-Marc, until such time that she is not proven to be a danger to the rest of us.
There is only one here whom I am a danger to, and there is nothing to save them should I wish them ill. And her eyes narrow across the flames to Barbaros. Octavia looks between the two of them. Your humors are inflamed, both of you. Your beasts near to the surface. I move to close this meeting for the night. Barbaros looks fuming. He's almost trembling in anger.
Ragnar Bjarn's daughter, I do not recognize you as an ally, nor a fit prince of this council, nor safe in my lands. I am quit of this meeting tonight, and shall not again share space with such a serpent. She is a threat to all whom are not already enthralled to her,
he says, looking out to the group of you.
And mark my words, I will not see a threat to England go unchecked.
Your words are marked, Barbaros, and I shall take measures to defend myself as well, should I perceive a clear threat. Barbaros, with a stormy gaze in his eyes, simply turns sharply around, his cape billowing as he departs quickly from the chamber, going down one of the dark hallways away. There are only a few moments' pause before Ragnar, almost just as soon, begins turning away from the meeting and calls out as she leaves, I must see to the safety of York at once. And she departs in the opposite direction as Barbaros, disappearing down another dark hallway.
I long suspected and feared the night this might occur. If the two of them...
He shakes his head.
They have shared heated words in the past. Though I have not seen it devolve to this extent.
Perhaps this shall reconcile with time.
Perhaps. And perhaps not.
If the two of them commit to violence, as in the knights of old, with the resources they possess, it will threaten the tenuous stability of England. This discord, like an open wound, could bring much devastation to the land. If it devolves further.
My lady, if it please you, this open wound has been festering for some time.
Ambrose folds his arms, nodding, agreeing with you.
He is right. This feud has been more than a millennia in the making. Like dry kindling. This most recent flare of tension, the loss of the Gauntlet, and now Jean-Marc. Perhaps this was the ember required. Suing for peace may or may not be fruitless, but should not be discarded so soon. A war prosecuted by either would ravage this country.
Then it is clear we need a resolution of this turmoil with haste, one way or another.
Which also means a strong prince must be installed in Lincoln.
Did you not describe the Prince Everly as one you thought capable? Kincaid says, kind of folding his hands together.
I merely wish for your leave to send word that she has been welcomed into the Covenant.
Sebastian nods. As I said, we should not waste any time in bringing her into our ranks. I propose the Gauntlet seek both parties, assess their sensibilities and states on the matter, seek peace preferably. If impossible, one at least must fall to save England from prolonged bloodshed.
Even so, it will take them months to rally any forces. This may simply end in intimidation. Forces may be rallied and never commit to pitched battle. Perhaps Ragnar, when she is calmer, will be content with cowing Barbaros with such intimidation. However, in the very possible event that negotiations fail, or the even more likely event that the Anarchs exploit this turmoil, we must be prepared to react to the situation as it deteriorates. The Covenant is not without its own martial resources, even among us. I believe the time has come for us to nominate a Field Marshal of Covenant forces, and I nominate Lady Versinghen. Her record speaks for itself, unless one of the rest of you think yourself better suited.
Her knowledge of combat tactics and stratagems is peerless amongst the four of us.
Perhaps it shall not be required. However, I do agree we are in need of organization prior to any rise in conflict.
The four princes seem to agree, the three others nodding. We will leave you to the task of arbitrating this how you see fit. As Prince Octavia explained, peace is preferable, if at all possible. However, if it is not, then you will be called upon to marshal the forces.
Understood.
And are we thus given leave to operate autonomously in this matter?
He nods again, and it seems as the others are condoning this.
I would suggest you seek allies where you might. Given your various backgrounds, I expect some of you may have contacts among the kind themselves. Ireland, Scotland, perhaps there are other Canaanites you know. At this juncture, I think it unwise to turn down any support we might find. If indeed two among our council become engaged, and a third only newly arrived. I believe you are otherwise dismissed, unless other concerns press you.
Are we to prioritize this matter above the investigation of the previous Gauntlet's demise?
You were to prioritize the stability of England. At this time, the engagement between Ragnar and Barbaros, whether it extends only to words or steel,
is of great importance. Determining who destroyed the Lincoln Prince may be to the greater safety of England, but not obviously so. You may wish to investigate and sue for peace. There are 4 of you. I am certain you need not all go to the same place. We are not here to pick and prod at your management.
Not at all, Your Grace. I merely wish to know your minds.
It seems this conflict is of the highest priority in my perspective. Ambrose is wise to consider that forces unseen may be greater threats. There may not be a clear right or wrong answer. All we ask is that you serve to protect and secure England while we secure the Covenant cities.
As you say, Your Grace. And he'll bow and take a step back.
On that note, there is business for me to attend to that very purpose. And so I bid you all a good evening.
And with a small movement that turns into a bow, Prince Sebastian turns and starts hobbling away. And soon after that, the remaining princes also start to depart. Unless you try to stop any of them to speak up again.
As they're making their exits, Eloned will do one final curtsy as is, well, courtesy to show respect.
And of course, this entire time, Enough Nemtet has been present, standing in the far corner away from this engagement, but obviously listening. He's remained stoic throughout. Otherwise, the 4 of you are left in the Chamber of the Covenant in the aftermath of this breakdown in the Council. And at this, we will take our break, and we will return in 15 minutes to open the scene to see what the Gauntlet decides to do. So we'll be back.
Okay, can you hear me?
See?
Yes.
Kill me.
Later.
No, we gotta go to that burial mound, and we gotta get some super powerful elder out, and then he's gonna drain us dry. Then we'll be...
Yeah.
We let the super powerful elder out and we sick him on Ragnar.
Yeah.
Why not Barbaros?
Barbaros is less of a threat. There's reasons. Look,
I understand he's less of a threat. But on the other hand, who says a life under a new dear glorious leader would be entirely? Jokes. Many jokes.
I, for one, welcome our new robot overlord, says Sarah. Okay, let's get back into it. So now in the wake of the Covenant Council meeting, the four of you stand around the brazier deciding what to do next. Anafnamtet seems content to stand by. The scene is yours.
Tom will give a nod over to Anafnemtet. I'd welcome any thoughts you care to share.
He takes a few steps closer to join you, so he's not speaking from the far corner. I do not know if it is my place to involve myself in the politics of your kind. I wish not to gain any enemies or cause any strife. I am an observer and a scholar. On these things I will gladly provide my advice.
Don't think of it as taking sides. You're simply voicing an opinion based on observations.
My observation is that it seems this council is shattered. Indeed, as Ambrose spoke, similar disagreements have occurred in the past between the two of them, though this one was perhaps the most vehement. I have not seen the fire in either of their eyes, as such as seen was tonight. I would not expect peace between the two of them. I have seen leaders war over passion, and it is the same fire in their eyes that I saw tonight.
I think passions does not do it justice. Passion's cool. This conflict has been broiling beneath the surface for some time, and only now has erupted.
Is it very surprising to you, given what has happened to your covenant and the Gauntlet before you?
Something tells me whether or not the previous Gauntlet survived, this would have come to a head eventually.
I agree. But perhaps this was precipitated, or perhaps hastened, by the events. Your kind do tend to hold grudges for ever. I have heard little of this grudge of perhaps where it originated. Do any of you know why this started to begin with?
We've heard stories from Barbarossa's brother.
Well, I shall not pry into events that are not my business to pry into. I have offered my observations. I am most curious where the group of you will go next. It seemed that your superiors were content to let you decide what was most pressing in regards to the safety of England.
I think we'll need to deliberate on that point for some time.
Yes, we will. Both issues are quite important, though.
The difference being finding out who killed the previous Gauntlet won't change anything. They'll still be dead.
On the other hand, it may be most pressing for your own survival. If indeed what factored for their demise remains true for yourselves. In this regard, the Covenant princes may not care.
No, trying to calm things is incredibly important. Though, how possible that is an entirely different matter. I have done what I could back during, well, the latest of the Welsh rebellions to try to ease the harm done. Unfortunately, the countryside is still razed.
What is Cormac doing during this time?
Cormac has been watching Elenid with that same lopsided smile on his face. When she says what she says, he says, "Well, they certainly liked you as a warbringer."
More like a war ender. And if
you're
not
modest.
for that damned dominated subordinate, then the French and English war would have gone in our favor as well.
Well, no wonder they chose you for this task. If it comes to it.
And something tells me that it will.
Unless one of them is picked off prematurely, should things not be able to be cool.
It does make me wonder whether either of them is right in chastising the other. Was one of them responsible?
If you are curious, you can certainly go speak to Barbarossa's brother again.
I doubt I'll get a satisfactory answer.
That does raise the question. Someone will need to speak with Barbaros. I would prefer to have an envoy with Ragnar at the same time to expedite the process.
The camera focuses on Robert. What is Robert doing?
He is standing with the group in this discussion. He looks torn between two decisions. Well, I need to follow the lead. In Prince Octavia's dominion.
We'd be spreading ourselves pretty thin.
Quite so.
Do you think this lead can't wait until after we quell this difficulty we're having?
Every moment that is lost on this could make the trail harder to find.
If I may. And he looks sheepishly to the group of you, holding his hands in front of him. London is east of here, as well as... You said you were going to Canterbury, yes?
Correct.
Prince Ragnar is in London. If indeed you wish to have your coterie together for these decisions and meetings, which seems prudent, you could at least meet with Ragnar at London before you stop in Canterbury for your lead.
Why is Ragna in London?
I was informed that she means to return there for some business with her kind. So she will be going there before returning north.
That does simplify matters. Cormac, Elenit, you had something north and west of here to follow up on. That's en route to Chester.
I suppose it is. Then it seems our paths might be set after all.
It's less than ideal. There were things I wanted to follow up on with Cormac in London, but perhaps I can do so on his behalf.
Cormac nods. That's as it must be. It seems that we're going to Chester.
I would not openly defy or create conflicts where it pertains to these Covenant princes, but I do not wish for either group of you to see harm, and in these dangerous times, perhaps you would stick together. It would not be in the interest of the princes, but it may be in the interest of yourselves.
We could make for Bath, look into that matter. No, there's too many men.
You have referred to this Bath. What is in Bath?
A potential ally. If they're still alive.
I'm afraid I don't understand.
We seek to reunite two separated friends.
This must be of some importance to you if you consider doing this instead of speaking with these riled princes.
It has been mentioned that it is on the way to speak with one of them.
And besides, I don't hold out much hope that a group of Ancilla is going to be able to sway a prince from vengeance.
Perhaps, but perhaps not. It does appear these Covenant princes do hold you with some regard and esteem, or they would not give you such leeway in deciding how best to secure England.
Or they're giving us just enough rope that we can hang ourselves.
Also possible. He nods a couple times. Whatever you do, despite Ambrose's suggestion, I would suggest you remain as a group. It may be less efficient, but if whatever hunts or hunted the previous Gauntlet still seeks you, you may not wish to face it alone, or fragmented, even. As the child said, there may be no correct answer here.
Only the answer we choose to pursue.
He bows his head.
What will it be, Gauntlet?
We can accomplish more together in one place, but it does leave other trails to run cold. I worry most about Ragna's temper. She has the means to put it to troubling you. It would also allow us to garrison the men in London and travel by ship to Bristol after we've sorted out matters in Canterbury and London itself, where we can make a side venture into Bath before carrying on to Chester.
If you have access to a ship in London.
That shouldn't be a problem.
Then that sounds most reasonable to me. I am very hopeful when all of this settles that you shall return, alive, as it were, to tell me of how all this goes. And he smiles weakly.
What say you, Robert? You've been awfully quiet. Will you allow yourself to be waylaid from your task? Or is it that pressing that you must separate?
Well, for now, I believe London is calling. Depending on what happens there, perhaps. I will be waylaid.
So that means you'll go with us then.
For now, yes.
Good. We finally decided on something.
Besides which, a field marshal can't lead all the troops herself.
As I am aware.
I simply mean to say you'll need at least a few decent generals beneath you. Happen to know where we can find some. He'll agree.
The generals I've worked with in the past are likely dead by now.
It was meant as a jape.
I understood it was.
Anyway, we ought to let the men know they'll be prepping to leave on the morning.
Let's get to it then. We have a lot of preparations to make.
I'll be glad when they can sit down and have a proper rest rather than a few days in a cramped manner.
And let's not repeat the same mistake we did last time.
Which mistake is that?
The mistake that I'm fairly certain a good deal of us ended up feeling when we got to town.
Sorry, I'm not picking up your meaning.
We should at least make pit stops in town to feed.
Ah. Fair enough. Best be about it, and he'll make.
All right. So the group of you in time departs from the Chamber of the Covenant back to the manor to begin preparations for leaving, departing towards London. At the manor, your men are roused and informed of the plans. Supplies are packed away, and with quick preparation, you're able to get the men underway by morning. the group of you traveling by carriage eastward from Salisbury back to London. It is still winter, and it is still over 80 miles. And so it does take you about 9 days before you arrive back in London, simply due to the weather that you must endure.
And as my suggestion before, stopping at towns along the way so they can feed, so they don't have the same problem they had before.
Being a bit more cognizant of that does help. So towards mid-February, you return to the streets of London. Your men quite tired from the march, but still in good shape. Fortunately, no one has gotten ill on the road, and all are glad to be back in a major city where they can have a real rest, where they can enjoy the company of a woman, a warm meal, a mug of ale, while they sit at the tavern. This does much to improve their morale as the group of you coalesces back at Tom's Manor. And so, on this night in mid-February, you all rise. I will say, don't worry about counting the cost of blood for now. You can stay where you're at, because you were very aware of feeding on the way. So you rise. Where do you all mean to go, or what do you mean to do now that you are in London? It's mid-February 1455.
Tom means to make for Elysium to see if Bella Matea might know where it is Ragna's got off to here.
Okay. Tom is going off to seek Bella Matea in Elysium. What is Robert doing?
I'll join Thomas at Elysium.
Okay. It's two going to Elysium. And Cormac?
Cormac will go too, even though he's not happy about it.
And Elened.
Elened will as well, but she is not exactly the most comfortable in those types of situations.
All right. We will transition as the group of you makes your way through the known passages and back into Elysium in London. You find Elysium seems untouched by all the drama that you've seen unfold between the Covenant princes. It's fairly populated mostly by neonates, as is often the case. But the fixture that is Bella Matea in Elysium, as well as, of course, Helen, are still present in their small congregation of hangers-on and sycophants. in this kind of small lounge area off to the side as the entire gauntlet enters and draws many looks as it does, including Bella Matea's.
A couple questions.
Yes.
Besides Bella, who all is gathered?
Let's see here. Cesar de Leon, the Camarilla diplomat, is present, speaking to a few people. Simone Deschamps is present. She's in one of the private alcoves off to the side that has a little bit of running water kind of going around it to provide some white noise. And another Cainite that you're well aware of, Mordecai Ben Yanhan, the one best known for having something owed to him throughout the city, is also in another alcove, speaking to some neo-native, no great status.
No sign of Cash or Tom?
No. Not right now.
Tom's going to approach Bella to see if he can't pick her brain.
Cormac will join him.
Bella's definitely watching the group of you as you enter. And Robert and Elenid, I'm assuming you're going with?
I'll go with as well.
It'd just be rude not to tag along at this point.
Alright. Moving as a group, you approach Bella Matea. A few neonates actually scatter at the collection of you. You have to appreciate it does look a bit imposing for the entire gauntlet to approach as a singular group. And as though being caught in the act of something, many of these neonates scatter in different directions. A few stay. And Bella just keeps eyes with the group of you, Tom especially. Well, the entire gauntlet. Good evening to me, I suppose. Unless you're here to drag me away.
I certainly hope we make a pleasant evening for you at the very least. A little birdie told me that a certain Yorkist prince was in town. Wasn't more specific than that. I hope you might fill in the blanks.
She smirks. It seems your little birdies and mine share something in common. Dear Ragna does seem to be present in the city, based on the banners I saw. Come in.
You saw with your own eyes.
She smiles. What interest do you have in Ragna, I wonder?
Diplomacy.
I heard that a few other Covenant princes left all around the same time that Ambrose did. All heading inward toward the center of England. Westward, I should say. And then Ambrose returns and Ragna on his heels. And then you. And she crosses her legs, looking very content and smug. What kind of diplomacy are we talking about?
Ah, tit for tat. You wouldn't happen to know where those banners stopped in London?
The banners stopped just inside the gate. But, more interesting to you, Ragnar was seen at Westminster.
Is she keeping a temporary haven there? I wonder.
I doubt it. Even Ambrose doesn't have that clout. But it's not the first time I've heard of her visiting someone in the Westminster Palace either.
Nor I. But, quid pro quo, there's a bit of conflict we seek to resolve.
Between her and Barbaros, I suspect.
I wouldn't dare to assume what exactly the conflict might be, personally. But I won't stop you from making presumptions of your own. And he'll give a bit of a knowing quirk to his lips.
Well, if you mean to engage with your diplomacy, you might do it quickly. Based on what I've heard, it doesn't sound as though her retinue is making for a long stay. They may be expected to leave within the next night or so. Whatever she's here for, she does not mean to stay long.
Then it's good we've caught her, and better that you've helped us.
There's a tension in the air, a haste about all of this. There's something about to happen.
I certainly hope not.
But you suspect it will. And she begins to smile.
Tom quirks his lips a bit. I said no such thing.
Her eyes go from you to Cormac.
Cormac shrugs and smiles.
She smiles at you, Cormac. I hope you're faring well.
As well as can be expected, given tumultuous times.
You should know our mutual friend is looking for you.
Where can we find him? He raises an eyebrow.
Her eyes go back to Tom. Well, I imagine if you're staying with this one, he'll find you soon enough.
Well, then I'll look forward to meeting again.
She blows you a kiss and winks.
Truly, he can scarcely stop talking about that gala of yours. What did happen? Tom grins.
A lady never
Nothing.
tells. And she smiles in return. Go ahead.
He just says nothing that would interest you, I'm sure.
I imagine you have a Yorkist prince to catch. You should be on your way.
Pleasure as always.
She makes the faintest hint of a nod.
And Tom will step away.
Cormac nods, then follows.
As will Robert.
And Eleanor as well.
Alright. Soon enough, the group of you is making your way out of Elysium.
And making for Westminster.
You're leaving Elysium, stepping into the night streets, which are at this hour still quite busy. It's very damp and misty. It seems like it must have just rained. Although there's still quite a bit of traffic, both on foot and horseback carriages here and there. And I will have all of you make a perception alertness difficulty 8.
Does detail-oriented apply?
In this one I'm gonna say no. It's more reflexive, like reactive, than you're looking for something. And Robert?
Difficulty A, yeah?
Yes. Okay. Thomas, Elenid, and Robert, despite all the traffic and the darkness of the streets as you're walking through, you do all notice a man off to the side. He's between two alleyways, and at first you didn't notice him except for his stare, and upon a little bit closer of a look, as you glance in that direction through the moving crowds, moving here and there, you're actually a little surprised you didn't recognize him before, or notice him before. You see the red and yellow outfit, the iconic jester, Tom Lafois, is watching you. Now that you notice him, he's standing out like a sore thumb.
Ned will tap Cormac on the shoulder and gesture towards the alleyway where LaFleur is standing.
And then you as well notice this after being pointed out.
Aha.
If you would like to speak to him in private, I certainly won't intrude.
Tom will glance at Ellen and Robert. Carry on to Westminster. We'll catch up.
Very well.
So be it.
Alright. So Robert and Ellen did continue on down the street as Cormac and Tom approach. And as you approach, trying to get through the crowds that are moving here and there, and get to the other side of the street, you can see intermittently he's getting farther away as he goes further into the alley and then turns a corner. You can see he is kind of watching you backing up as you approach, and then makes a calm exit. It's obvious that he recognized you approaching.
So we get into the alleyway and he's just...
No, you continue on down the alleyway, but I want to make sure you weren't gonna do anything before going in. You see he's going further in, and you haven't turned the corner yet. I just want to make sure you're committing to it.
Cormac at least is committed.
Alright. So Cormac, you cross the street and go into the alleyway, which is much darker. There are a few boxes which were also kind of obscuring him. And as you go further and turn the corner towards where Tom went, you see he stops not very far down the alleyway, and here the buildings rise very high and this back alley is very narrow. There are a lot of puddles where the water's collected and hasn't drained anywhere, and a bit of muck here and there, a lot of debris. There's not much light back here, but you can see his outline, and what little light there is reflects well off of his red and yellow outfit. Tom LaFleur kind of waves his finger in front of him and kind of shakes his head. Tom LaFleur meant to meet with only Cormac. Or perhaps Cormac and his young lady friend.
Thomas is there, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Cormac will grin and look at Thomas and shrug.
Caution is the better part of valor, after all. But he'll take a step back. I'll make sure you're not disturbed.
Tom smiles as he starts going further into the alley away from you, perhaps out of an abundance of caution.
Cormac follows.
Alright, you pass through a low-hanging clothing line, which kind of makes a screen into this alleyway, which opens up slightly, and there's a little bit more light, just ambient light kind of coming in, although it's still quite dark back here. And it's a dead-end alley. It's not a good place to be unless you're a confident warrior, certainly, or very familiar with these streets. And finally, as it dead ends, he turns to you. Tom Lefoy met with friends, and my friends are interested in you. They have a proposition for you. If Cormac de Courcy is still interested in making these friends his.
More than interested, Master de Foix.
Does Cormac de Courcy know Mr. Edward de Warren? I wonder. He makes a very big show of kind of putting a finger to his chin and bending over.
Do I know Edward de Warren? Oh, wait. Yeah.
Yes, he is the Prince of Dublin.
Yes, that's what I was just thinking. Yes, of course I know him. You count him among your friends?
Tom did not say that. Quite. Is Cormac de Courcy aware of Edward de Warren's relationship with Barbaros? He begins to pace.
I am aware of some of what has occurred between them. I didn't think there was much of a relationship, so to speak.
Not a very good one, he says, grinning again.
Yes, well, Prince de Warren, Prince Barbaros is not that fond of Ireland, it seems.
His grin grows, his big pink gums on display again. That is right, Cormac de Courcy. And so, why should he be so fond of all the ships coming from Ireland, and all the goods they bring? It does not make any sense to Tom Lefoy. Nor to Tom Lefoy's friends. Better, he kind of points up into the air, as if having a great idea, if these supplies went to where they are needed, to whom they are needed. And he waits, looking to you.
I absolutely agree with you. I had no idea that Barbaros was taking advantage.
Indeed. Barbaros makes a hefty sum off of Ireland. At very low cost. He kind of waves his hands out very dramatically.
And yet will not lend aid when it is asked. Cormac's face is getting that look again, the storm clouds brewing.
Tom Lefoy's friends think Cormac de Courcy should meet with Edward de Warren again. I think Edward de Warren would have some interesting ideas about what to do about this situation.
I have no doubt of that, given our history together. You can tell your friends that Cormac de Courcy is more than willing to meet with Prince Edward de Warren.
This will please Tom Lefoy's friends very much. And Tom Lefoy. Tom will go let them know. When does Cormac think he will go to Ireland next?
There had already been some discussion of that, as a matter of fact. I will send a message immediately to Prince de Warren and visit him at my first opportunity.
Do not do that. He kind of interrupts you almost at the end, pointing to you. No
Why?
messages.
Do you think it would be intercepted?
Yes, intercepted. Talk in person. Trust no one. Cormac de Courcy.
I should have no problem with that.
He nods a couple of times. Good luck, Mr. Dodo Bird. And he does kind of this back roll, and it looks like he disappears into the wall of this home behind him, except you realize there was kind of this loose wooden fencing that he either knew about or broke through. He kind of just disappeared into his house with this little roll.
Cormac colors himself a little bit impressed by this regnantless ghoul, although he's now quite angry. He will return to Thomas, and Thomas will certainly recognize the look on his face.
Bad news.
Yes and no. The good news is Master Defoy is coming through on his promises.
And the bad news.
Prince Barbaros has taken a piss on me for the last time.
You're going to have to explain a bit better than that.
I will, but not here where prying ears can hear.
As you say. I expect to be paying a visit to Barbaros in the very near future anyway. Let's catch up to the others.
Aye.
Soon enough, you rejoin, or perhaps catch up to Elenid and Robert. We're moving at a casual pace as you catch up to them from behind. And the group of you continue on towards Westminster. So you approach the Westminster Palace, which is a very lavish estate. If anything, if nothing else, demonstrates a disparity of wealth between the peasants and the upper class, it is walking through the halls of Westminster Palace. Passing through the stone hallways, you see the very luxurious, decadent tapestries and appointments, nice furniture, the red carpets rolled out. You are told that somewhere in here, Ragna is meeting with perhaps a kind contact. Remind me how you are all dressed today, as that will be relevant. We'll start with Thomas.
Tom would have dressed the nines, expecting to be dealing with Bella and possibly also Ragna. Brushed velvet long coat, dress shirt beneath it, fine woolen trews.
And Cormac.
Cormac is dressed in his normal nobleman's threadbare finery. It's not in the best shape anymore, as he hasn't bought new clothing in a long time. He still carries it off well, but it's obvious that it's fraying at the knees and the elbows. Short cape he wears over his neck is looking rather ragged.
And Robert.
Robert's wearing his standard finery for a meeting of the princes. Perhaps it is not the freshest laundered due to the long traveling, but he had a recent enough chance to pick a fresh outfit out.
Okay. And Elenid.
Oh, she is in her standard attire, the gray cloak, the mostly brown and white dress, and that little white head covering. She does not look like she belongs here in the slightest.
Yeah, that's not doing you any favors here. I'll have you all roll an appearance etiquette. For Elenid, it's going to be at difficulty 8. Everyone else is at difficulty 6. Okay. Cormac, Tom, and Robert, to varying degrees, you're pulling off your ability to look like you belong here as you step through the stone halls and pass through the guards. You start to see some of the decadent quality of this palace, but just as you're starting to see that, Elenid gets stopped as she's trailing behind a little bit, and a couple guards are patrolling through, dressed well in plate. And one holds a hand out to her. What up, miss? I don't think you have any business being in here. Why don't you be on your way?
Robert will rush back at seeing this.
Yeah, by this point, the two guards have almost pierced your group, and so the three of you are kind of walking along just as these two guards intersect and intercept Elenid as you're coming back.
Gentlemen, go ahead.
My apologies, sirs. It seems I was separated from the person I was accompanying.
What she says is true, gentlemen.
They both turn to look at you, the metal on their plate armor kind of shifting and clanking a bit. This is a servant of yours, my lord.
Aye, she is with us.
Manipulation, subterfuge, stand difficulty. Five successes. He turns to you, and as you speak, his eyes through the helmet kind of widen for a bit. Apologies, my lord, did not mean to interrupt. As you were. He turns to you, Elenid, and the two of them continue on their patrol, leaving you.
Robert will just make a motion to the rest of the group and begin walking.
Elenid will quickly follow.
Alright. So you make your way through these entrance hallways into the first of these great chambers. And you see that the ceilings are very high, buttressed. There's very nice and very expensive colored paned glass windows depicting various murals of Catholic significance. An arcade of arched hallways. This place is very elaborate. And as you're walking through, you're searching for some time, looking for anything of note, and eventually you do see Prince Ragna appear through one of these hallways. It seems like she's descending some steps back into this area after maybe 20-30 minutes of searching around. Attended, of course, by Lydia, the red-hooded woman of very slender figure. Ragna sees the group of you and stops in her tracks as she finishes descending the stairs, anticipating that she'll be intercepted by the group of you next.
Robert will be... Oh, go ahead.
Your Grace. So good that we have managed to catch you before you quit the city.
Indeed. I was on my way out of the palace this very moment. You're quite fortunate. I did not expect to see you here. What are you doing here?
We wished to treat with you regarding certain diplomatic matters.
Her eyes narrow briefly. I proclaimed I was going to York. How did you know to find me here, I wonder?
You're not the only one with eyes in places.
I am not fond of being watched, nor in the mood for your coy personality, Chamberlain. What diplomacy have you come to bring?
We wish to sue for peace between Chester and York.
then perhaps you have wasted a ride, and better have gone to Chester. I would suggest that Barbaros was more aggrieved by my words. What makes you think that I shall strike first?
I think no such thing. But I find it best to negotiate with both parties at once, and I wondered what it would take to bring you to the table.
She smirks. Her lips part as though to say something, but you think, whatever it was, she thinks better of it. She looks off to the side to regain her composure briefly. I understand as the Gauntlet, your duty is to ensure the peace and stability of England. But my conflict with Barbaros is strictly between myself and Barbaros. You're wasting your time.
We have been empowered by your peers to mediate this dispute to whatever ends are necessary.
She studies you very seriously, and her eyes go to the rest of you.
Yes. There are great concerns amongst the council about the unity.
Whatever means
But,
necessary. She says,
no.
interrupting you.
Whatever ends. Again, we sue for peace.
Do you? Whose peace? Mine or Barbaros?
The covenants.
There is peace. I anticipate there shall be peace again. Soon.
But at what cost?
That is up to Barbaros. She says, almost leaning a bit forward towards you.
In any conflict, it requires two participants.
As I said in the chamber, I am prepared to defend York from any perceived threat. By whatever ends I see fit.
And you will not treat with Barbaros and put an end to this conflict.
I anticipate I shall put an end to this conflict when he forces my hand.
I, for one, would not see it so.
Have you much love for Barbaros?
I have much love for England. I told you in York. I serve England. I continue to do so. I wish only for an amicable resolution without conflict.
Do not pretend to be so naive, Lord Chamberlain. It does not suit you. And what of the rest of you? She says, looking to the each three remaining. Do you all share your love for Barbaros?
I have no love at all for Barbaros. But as Thomas says, I have a love for this country. And if you two are at war, it will pull it apart.
Her eyes turn to Elenid then.
Even with myself mediating the damage done in some of the last conflicts I have been in, well, one can still look at the countryside and see the scars of it. There are concerns that it will, well, do to England what the Welsh uprising did to Wales.
And then she turns, looking to Robert. Thoughts, Lord de Vere?
Of course, maintaining the status quo is preferable, but I do not have any love of Barbaros.
As the superior force, you have the advantage. You can choose to press the conflict, and it will either go your way or it won't. Or you could play the beneficent prince. Treat with your adversary and resolve whatever conflicts you have through diplomatic means without bloodshed.
Alright. I will take a Charisma Expression difficulty 9 from all of you.
Tom's going to spend some willpower on this.
And just need a roll from... Oh, is that him?
Yeah, we're all there. 3 successes total between the 4 of us. Kind of abysmal.
She turns to each of you. She seems to be taking you seriously, at least. Her eyes fall on Cormac. War between us would tear this country apart. You are right, Lord de Courcy. However, I cannot be held responsible for that if I defend York against Barbaros.
It would be a terrible thing to see it come to that.
I am open to negotiation, she says, almost sighing, and after several moments of silence. However, you must convince him as well. And I shall not cease preparations for York's defense until I have a guarantee of his willingness to meet.
He will ask for concessions. What may we bring him?
My only concession is a willingness to meet, to speak. That, I think, is more than generous. For I do not believe you're incorrect in the assessment of the balance of power, Lord Chamberlain. I need not say anything to him. That I offer anything is a concession. Her eyes then turn to Elenid. Your skills would not go unappreciated.
The rest of the princes have much the same thought.
Just know that I offered.
I will keep it in mind, and it is a very generous offer.
Should Barbaros refuse my offer to negotiate, as I expect he shall, and this does turn to conflict, as I expect he shall enforce, then I will be using Jesper's ability to his greatest potential. However, I would prefer someone who was at Agincourt. The same offer is extended to the rest of you as well. Your service to me would be greatly appreciated, should things come to that.
For my part, I will endeavor to avoid things coming to a head in such a way.
Robert gives a pleasant smile, but says nothing more.
Does Robert try to intimate anything with his smile?
Yeah, sure. It could be a knowing smile that Ragna could infer that he would be willing to help her.
Alright. She looks to you, briefly. Her eyes look again to Cormac.
The other princes would expect us to maintain our air of impartiality. I'm sure you would expect the same.
The other princes wish for this to come to an end by any ends, it sounds. There is one end that this might conclude with, perhaps more quickly with your aid. Perhaps the country need not be torn apart for so long. A thought, Lord de Courcy. You shall not have forever to decide.
No, it seems that we shall not.
Then I bid you a good evening. My business here is done. I am to return to York now.
We will send word there after we have met with Barbaro.
Be quick about it. I imagine we shall either speak soon, or we shall engage in another way very soon. And her head kind of looks down as her eyes go up to you knowingly. And then she nods to each of you and departs, Lydia following after and also giving you each a look, polite. And as she departs and you are left in the Great Hall of the Westminster Palace, the scene fades to black, and at that we will end the session and pick it up again next week.
Delicious.
Yes. Y'all are in the middle of a war, perhaps.
I'm not to say not yet.
Surprisingly good rolls, actually.
The dice god smiled upon me till that very last roll.
You only needed one botch for that to fuck up. And none of you botched.
Thankfully.
Then after you didn't botch, you netted 3 successes. Averting war at this point is not an easy task, and you did not totally screw it up yet.
Huzzah!
Huzzah! Now we get to see if we can end up curbing the War of the Roses.
History is yet to be decided. You could change great things. Alright, so we will do 2 experience all around, and let us do some entertaining role players. Start with Robert.
I'm gonna have to give it to Thomas for taking most of the diplomatic talking.
Alright, and Tom.
I'm actually going to give it to Cormac. He's definitely playing up his internal turmoil a lot.
Cool, I agree. Cormac.
Ooh, I'm gonna give it to Ellen at this for taking it in stride when she was basically appointed War Master.
Well, I mean, who else would they pick?
That would be War Mistress. Thank you.
Whatevs.
Don't misgender her.
And Elnade.
Hmm. I'm going to give it to Cormac as well for the only other person in the room that was smiling during the two princes bickering and potentially starting a war, and B, well, the event that transpired with the going down the alley. Because there's no way that's gonna explode. No, not in the slightest.
So paranoid. Great.
Hey, this game makes you paranoid.
It's true. Alright, very cool. Good stuff happening. Progress on the main story. And this scene, the scene with the Covenant Council and the obvious lines in the sand being drawn. I've been waiting for it for a while because it kind of marks the next chapter that's going to be starting soon, which I think you can all guess is what that might be. So I'm pretty excited for what's coming up next, and I'm glad we could get through this, and I'm looking forward to next week.
Huzzah!
Cool.
Yay.
Alright. I'll talk to you guys throughout the week, and otherwise, good game. Have a good night.
Ta.
Good night.